Imagine a glittering ballroom filled with the city's elite, their diamonds catching every beam of chandelier light. The music is soft, yet tension crackles in the air like static electricity. Suddenly, all chatter stops. Heads turn as a pregnant woman in an elegant gown sweeps through the doors, flanked by stern-faced security guards. She holds a slim folder of documents, ownership papers to $1 billion empire. Eyes dart to her husband on the far side of the room. He stands frozen, a stunning young mistress clinging to his arm. In that charged moment, betrayal, revenge, and power collide, setting the stage for the scandal of the decade. Gregory Harrington was born into a world of starched collars, polished shoes, and hushed corridors echoing with old money whispers. He was the heir to the Harrington Empire, a vast conglomerate that had begun as a humble shipping operation in the mid-1800s. Over generations, the Harrington family extended its reach to luxury hotels, real estate developments, and philanthropic ventures that echoed across Europe and the Americas. Growing up in London's upscale Belgravia district, Gregory was introduced early to grand parties, charitable functions, and negotiations over tea with visiting dignitaries. Despite the endless swirl of family obligations, his father Charles Harrington always impressed upon him a single guiding principle. Reputation is everything. Protect it with your life. Gregory's mother, the regal Victoria Harrington, was no less formidable. She commanded a private art collection valued in the hundreds of millions. As a founding board member of the Tate Modern, she took Gregory by the hand through corridors of priceless paintings, whispering lessons about legacy and responsibility. When Gregory turned 10, she curated an exhibition of young emerging artists in his honor. That was the first time he learned how easily one could shape public perception through wealth and connections. From that point forward, Gregory was groomed for greatness. He attended Eton, then Oxford, majoring in international business. He was the quintessential gentleman, tall, dashing, articulate, and capable of dazzling any room with his charm. Young men envied him. Young women fluttered around him like moths to a flame. His father's empire would one day rest firmly on Gregory's shoulders. There was never a doubt in anyone's mind that he'd be worthy of the task. But behind the glamour lurked a restless ambition that gnawed at Gregory's insides. He wasn't content merely to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to surpass them. He dreamed of expanding the Harrington Empire into new industries, forging alliances that would catapult the family name from storied old money clan to unstoppable global juggernaut. Fate, though, has a way of complicating even the best-laid plans. Life began to change swiftly for Gregory when he fell in love with and married Sophia Moretti, a Milanese heiress with a fierce intellect and striking beauty. She was the daughter of Augusto Moretti, a self-made billionaire who had revolutionized Italy's luxury automobile market. More than that, Sophia brought her own sense of style and passion to the Harrington name. She was someone who believed in innovation, daring, and forging new paths, a perfect match for Gregory's ambition, or so everyone thought. When the Harrington-Moretti wedding took place in Lake Como, it was hailed as one of the grandest events of the decade, rumored to have cost upward of 10 million euros. Dignitaries, celebrities, think the likes of business moguls like Kevin O'Leary and philanthropic icons from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation graced the lavish ceremony. And for a while, the newlyweds were the epitome of happiness, with tabloids praising their union as a match made in heaven. Yet beneath the radiant smiles and carefully curated Instagram posts, tensions brewed. Gregory threw himself into the Harrington conglomerate with unstoppable fervor, while Sophia dove into philanthropic ventures and her emerging fashion line. Their worlds began to drift apart, Over time, private dinners became lonely affairs, overshadowed by urgent board meetings and phone calls spanning time zones. And as often happens in circles of enormous wealth, temptation crept in. The truth behind Gregory's affair would remain hidden for far longer than it should have. But nothing stays buried forever, especially not in a family that sees and hears everything. By the time whispers reached Sophia's ears, Gregory was teetering on the brink of a scandal that would rock London and Milan alike. No one could have predicted how spectacularly it would unravel, least of all Gregory himself. Sophia Harrington née Moretti prided herself on her independence. She had grown up in a luxurious villa on the outskirts of Milan. Yet she'd been raised not as a delicate ornament, but as a strong, determined woman. She volunteered at animal shelters, advocated for sustainable agriculture, and poured her heart into Moretti philanthropic causes. Unlike many in her social circle, she believed in rolling up her sleeves and making a real difference. It was precisely this blend of compassion and strength that captured Gregory's heart. But marriage to Gregory demanded more than affection. It required a kind of absorption into the Harrington brand. She attended endless banquets, smiled for countless photographs, and navigated boardroom politics that would intimidate the bravest of hearts. Though unaccustomed to the archaic traditions of British aristocracy, Sophia adapted, determined to merge the Harrington and Moretti legacies into something grander and more meaningful. But over time, cracks began to show. The Harrington estate in Surrey, an opulent manor with sprawling gardens reminiscent of a classic English fairy tale, became more of a museum than a home. Events, galas, charitable auctions, they never seemed to end. Gregory was determined to make an impact beyond just shipping and hotels. He sought partnerships in tech startups, negotiations with green energy firms, even rumored dealings with influential figures in Silicon Valley. Meeting after meeting, flight after flight, he was rarely home. Sophia might not have minded the long hours if Gregory still found time for her. But soon her calls to him went unanswered for hours. Romantic getaways were rescheduled ad infinitum. On many nights she dined alone at a table set for two. It was in those quiet moments, while running her fingers along the edges of an untouched dinner plate, that she first felt the pang of impending loneliness. Ironically, Sophia became pregnant just as the distance between them grew insurmountable. The news of her pregnancy filled her with joy and trepidation alike. She fantasized that the baby might bring Gregory back into her life, reminding him of the vow they made by Lake Como. But as her belly swelled, his presence remained as elusive as ever. In that emotional vacuum, her personal staff began to whisper. At first, it was subtle remarks, unusual late-night calls, suspicious itinerary changes. Then it grew bolder. A loyal maid, Maria, hinted one afternoon that she had seen a woman's earring in one of Gregory's jackets. Sophia's heart froze. She reminded herself not to jump to conclusions. The Harrington staff was large mistakes could happen. But the gnawing doubt refused to subside. When Maria discreetly left a photograph on Sophia's vanity, Gregory stepping out of the Four Seasons lobby in New York, arm in arm, with a statuesque brunette, Sophia's worst fears became tangible. She confronted Gregory that very night. He denied everything, of course, apologized for letting business associates get too familiar, claimed it was paparazzi sensationalism. For a time, she believed him. She wanted desperately to believe him. But then came the suspicious credit card bills with charges at upscale boutiques in Paris where Sophia hadn't traveled. Private jet logs that didn't align with the business trips Gregory claimed he was on. Subtleties only a sharp mind like Sophia's could detect. One by one, pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Still, she collected her evidence, quietly resisting any confrontation until she was absolutely certain. While Gregory was away in Hong Kong, sealing a major energy deal, Sophia took the bold step of confiding in her father, Augusto Moretti. A wise businessman who had clawed his way to the top, Augusto had no patience for men who mistreated his daughter. He flew to London, met with her in secret, and arranged for her legal protection. If Gregory was indeed betraying her, she would be ready to defend herself and her unborn child. Sophia felt a simmering rage, but also heartbreak. She remembered the man who had shown up at her charity event in Milan, with a single red rose, determined to woo her away from a dinner date with a visiting aristocrat. That man had told her they could build a better world together. That man was nowhere to be found. In his place stood a stranger consumed by power status and apparently infidelity. The time for illusions was over. She had a baby to protect, a family name to uphold, and a heartbreak to avenge. The seeds of discontent were planted. All that remained was the perfect stage for confrontation. As fate would have it, that stage would be a gala so grand that every camera in London would be pointed in Gregory Harrington's direction. Her name was Elena Petrova. Born in St. Petersburg, she grew up amidst opulent ballrooms and artistic salons. Elena's father, Dmitri Petrova, was a storied figure in Russian circles, an oligarch with fingers in everything from oil pipelines to exclusive art auctions. He used his influence to place Elena in the best boarding schools, the most prestigious finishing academies, ensuring she moved through society with effortless grace. Elena was clever, determined, and had a knack for reading the vulnerabilities of powerful men. By the time she stepped into Gregory Harrington's orbit, she was a seasoned socialite. Their worlds intersected at a London charity auction for children's hospitals hosted by the Harrington Foundation. Elena, representing a Russian philanthropic group, had donated a rare Fabergé egg. Gregory, intrigued by her porcelain complexion and magnetic poise, introduced himself. Their initial conversation was brief yet charged. Business cards were exchanged. Fleeting glances were shared. One dinner became two, then weekends together, masquerading as business trips. Elena, with her smoky voice and quietly intense presence, listened attentively to Gregory's grand ambitions. She laughed at his jokes, praised his visionary outlook, and made him feel as if he were the most important man in the world. In return, he lavished her with rare art pieces, Cartier bracelets, and whispered promises of a future far away from prying eyes. For Elena, this was a calculated dance. She saw in Gregory both a golden ticket and a puzzle to solve. Here was a man weighed down by responsibilities to a legacy older than anyone could remember. She found it tantalizing to know she could draw him away from that well-bred world. It gave her a sense of triumph. Yet she was not immune to Gregory's charm either. He could be remarkably considerate, sending her flowers in the middle of the night, reciting lines from Shakespeare he'd memorized during his boarding school days. Still, the specter of Sophia loomed. Elena knew that Gregory was married, and married men rarely left their wives, especially those with old money connections and unborn heirs. Yet she told herself that their love was different, that Gregory's marriage was already failing. Whenever doubts arose, Gregory would confide in her. "Sophia doesn't understand me like you do, or—" We married out of familial obligation. The more he lamented his marital misfortunes, the more Elena believed she was his solace. As their affair deepened, Elena began attending events in close proximity to the Harrington circle, though always disguised as a friend of a friend. She stood just far enough away to avoid direct scrutiny, but close enough to keep Gregory enthralled. She brushed shoulders with influencers, discreetly forging her own alliances. More than one insider noticed Gregory's lingering gazes at the mysterious Russian beauty, but assumed it was mere flirtation. When rumors began to swirl that Sophia was pregnant, Elena felt a spike of panic. She confronted Gregory in a penthouse suite at the Mandarin Oriental. With tears in her eyes, she asked if the baby changed things. He cradled her face and murmured, "It doesn't have to. My marriage has been a shell for a long time." And in that stolen moment, Eleanor believed him, or chose to. A wave of euphoria washed over her when Gregory quietly invited her to a grand gala that the Harrington Foundation would soon host at the prestigious Claridge's Hotel in London. It was rumored that the event would bring together the biggest names in finance, art, and aristocracy. "Be my companion for the night," he told her, "I want you by my side." What Elena did not realize was how very public this event would be, and how precarious their escapade truly was. Because while she looked forward to a night of diamonds and champagne, Sophia was planning an entirely different spectacle. One that would shatter the illusions Elena had been building piece by glossy piece. The Harrington Foundation's annual gala for global education had for more than a decade been a glittering fixture on London's high society calendar. Industry titans, philanthropy, giants, and members of Europe's oldest noble families clamoured for invitations. It was part fundraiser, part social event of the season, and 100% strategic networking opportunity. The guest list read like a who's who of the wealthiest and most influential in the world. Think seats taken by the likes of Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and other luminaries. In previous years, Sophia played a significant role in organizing the gala. She ensured the decor was tasteful, but never gaudy, the performances memorable yet dignified. She curated the auction items, ranging from rare diamond chokers to exclusive safari experiences, and personally selected the theme, typically something close to her heart, such as literacy in the developing world or scholarship funds for underprivileged youth. But this year was different. The minute the planning committee convened, there was an awkward hush regarding Sophia. Her name was conspicuously absent from the list of key organizers. Gregory insisted that she was focused on personal matters, a vague nod to her pregnancy. In truth, he was trying to distance her from an event he intended to use for different purposes, most notably parading Elena as his trusted business associate in front of the wealthiest men and women on the planet. Behind the scenes, the staff whispered, would Sophia step down from her duties so easily? If so, was everything all right in the Harrington marriage? The Harrington butlers, chauffeurs, and kitchen staff had their own gossip networks spanning multiple estates. Rumors circulated like wildfire. Some said Sophia had taken ill. Others insisted she was just delegating responsibilities, and a few even mentioned that Gregory was traveling far too often without her. Speculation became the staff's daily sport. Meanwhile, Gregory was busy orchestrating a high-profile guest list. He personally invited Elon Musk's European PR team, top executives from Tesla, and high-ranking officials from the British government. He extended invitations to new tech entrepreneurs in the green energy sector, seeking to make strategic alliances. Each day, envelopes of acceptance poured in, further inflating his ego and sense of control. Elena Petrova was thrilled beyond measure to be included. She selected a black velvet gown, embroidered with gold filigree, a custom piece from a designer friend in Paris. She booked her own suite at Claridge's, wanting to remain discreet, and studied the names on the guest list, memorizing faces and potential allies. This event could catapult her from mysterious consort to a legitimate influencer in philanthropic and social circles. If she played her cards right, she might secure her position by Gregory's side in a far more public way than any mistress had a right to expect. Unbeknownst to both Gregory and Eleanor, Sophia had been closely monitoring the gala preparations through her connections. The Harrington brand was still half hers, at least for now, and her father's legal advisors had made sure to keep her informed. When she learned that Elena Petrova's name was on the official guest list, her heart pounded with fury and a strange sense of relief. Finally, the moment had arrived. If Gregory wanted to humiliate her by flaunting his mistress at an event they had traditionally co-hosted, Sophia would not let it happen without consequences. Sophia consulted with her father, Augusto Moretti, who reminded her of a principle he had used in building his own empire. Always make sure you hold the trump card. Over the past months, Sophia had gathered financial and legal documents detailing the complex structure of the Harrington conglomerate. She had uncovered certain vulnerabilities, a labyrinth of trusts, shell companies, and inherited titles that in the right hands could shift control. Augustus offered her the best legal minds, ensuring that by the gala night, Sophia would be armed with the ultimate surprise. Sophia arranged for an impeccably tailored gown that would accommodate her pregnant belly, a shimmering emerald creation that symbolized both her Moretti lineage and her unwavering strength. She engaged a private security team to accompany her men loyal not just to the Harrington name, but to her personally. Their mere presence would raise eyebrows and signal that something was about to change. Still, she played the part of the unsuspecting wife, instructing the staff to keep her travel plans under wraps. She declined interviews, turned down invitations, and maintained a low profile in the final weeks leading up to the gala. Her silence only fueled speculation. Some tabloids even ran stories that Sophia was bedridden or had fled to Italy for an extended sabbatical. And so the stage was set. Gregory, confidently oblivious, believed everything was falling perfectly into place for the Harrington Foundation's most memorable gala yet. Elena eagerly awaited her moment in the spotlight. Sophia, pregnant and resolute, stood ready with the one card that would eclipse every diamond, every donation, every handshake in that room. The days leading up to the gala were marked by mounting tension within the Harrington circle. Claridge's hotel, chosen for its timeless elegance, buzzed with activity. Florists arranged towering centerpieces of white orchids and calla lilies. Decorators unfurled plush red carpets, complete with gold-trimmed edges. Technicians tested the sound system, ensuring the classical quartet's music would float effortlessly through the grand ballroom. Meanwhile, paparazzi staked out vantage points along Brook Street, eager to capture the star-studded arrivals. Gregory arrived at the hotel 2 days early to oversee last-minute details. He personally inspected the suite reserved for their high-profile guests, including a rumored contingent from the Vatican and philanthropic heavyweights from Asia. His phone rang incessantly. Calls from the Harrington board, from foreign investors, from journalists hoping for a soundbite. To everyone he spoke with the polished ease of a man in total control. But beneath that suave exterior was a coil of anxiety. This gala had to be immaculate. He wanted to leave no doubt that he was the visionary leader to take Harrington conglomerate to unprecedented heights. At odd hours, Gregory would slip away to Elena Petrova's suite. Their encounters were both passionate and subdued, fueled by the thrill of secrecy but tinged with foreboding. Elena sensed Gregory's nerves. She offered him comforting words, reminding him that everything was in place for the big event. She massaged his shoulders, whispered sweet praises in Russian, and sometimes teased him about their eventual public debut. But each time she mentioned coming out in the open, Gregory's expression darkened. He insisted they maintain their discretion a while longer. Elena grew a little uneasy. She wanted to believe Gregory would soon embrace their relationship publicly, but she saw how swiftly he could compartmentalize his life. She found it baffling that a man who prided himself on honesty in business could be so duplicitous in love. Still, Eleanor reminded herself that men like Gregory were shaped by complex family legacies and tangled financial obligations. Perhaps patience was the price she must pay to secure her future as his confidant. Meanwhile, at the Harrington estate, Sophia was quietly making arrangements of her own. She decided to spend the final night before the gala in London, booking herself into the Corinthia Hotel under her maiden name, Sophia Moretti. If Gregory noticed or cared, he gave no outward sign. Perhaps he even assumed she was spending time with her family in Italy, or simply resting at the Surrey Manor. The staff, forbidden from revealing her whereabouts, followed her instructions to the letter. Sophia's private security detail. 5 imposing men with discreet earpieces shuffled in and out of her suite. Her father's legal counsel, a formidable attorney named Giancarlo Rossi, delivered the final set of documents. Everything was in order. Ownership papers detailing how certain trusts and holdings would revert to Sophia under multiple trigger conditions, including marital misconduct. In a quirk of old Harrington estate law, certain titles and properties originally belonged to the wives of Harrington heirs, an archaic tradition from when British peerages passed down partial property rights through female lines under specific circumstances. Sophia felt a rush of defiance and heartbreak. There was no going back now. The child in her belly shifted as if sensing her turmoil. She cradled it gently. We deserve better than this, she thought. A wave of sadness followed. She had once believed in Gregory. In a kinder world, they could have forged an empire together, raising a child who knew nothing of scandal or betrayal. Instead, she was about to publicly unmask him. The tabloids sensed a storm brewing. A few tabloids speculated that a major announcement would rock the gala. Anonymous sources alluded to tensions within the Harrington clan. Could this be a hostile takeover? Read one headline in the Daily Mirror. Will the pregnant Mrs. Harrington appear? Asked another. It was all speculation, but enough to ratchet up public interest. On the eve of the gala, London's elite braced themselves for a spectacle. Socialites debated outfit choices, each hoping to stand out among the sea of couture. Business magnates strategized who to meet and which deals to finalize. Meanwhile, the staff at Claridge's polished silverware under glistening chandeliers, occasionally pausing to share rumors about the Harringtons' mysterious absence of a united front. No one but Sophia and a select few insiders truly understood the magnitude of what was about to unfold. And as the clock ticked toward the momentous evening, the tension in the air felt electric, like static before a thunderstorm that would leave no one untouched by its force. The night of the gala arrived in a swirl of limousine exhaust and camera flashes. From the early evening, a steady stream of high-profile guests spilled onto Brook Street. Men in bespoke tuxedos escorted women adorned in sparkling gowns and heirloom jewels. The roped-off entrance to Claridge's transformed into a spectacle as paparazzi shouted names, capturing every twirl, every wave. Inside the grand ballroom was resplendent with thousands of fairy lights, woven into elaborate floral arrangements. The evening's theme, a renaissance of education, was reflected in the decor, ornate references to historical libraries. Old globes and antique books served as centerpieces. A tastefully arranged stage awaited the night's main speeches, flanked by 2 large screens for multimedia presentations. An orchestra played softly, creating an ambiance that was at once luxurious and expectant. Gregory Harrington stood near the main entrance, graciously welcoming guests. His tailored midnight blue tuxedo accentuated his broad shoulders and unmistakable confidence. He shook hands with politicians, exchanged cheek kisses with European royalty, and offered polite nods to tech entrepreneurs he hoped to impress. The presence of so many potential investors and collaborators buoyed him. This was his moment to shine as the unstoppable force behind the Harrington Empire's expansion. Across the room, Elena Petrova glided through the crowd, turning heads with her black velvet gown embroidered with gold. She lingered by groups engaged in hushed conversations, offering her warmest smiles and well-timed remarks in perfect English or French depending on her audience. Tonight was her debut, and she intended to seize every opportunity to be recognized not merely as some socialite, but as a power player in her own right. As the clock approached 8, the ballroom was nearly at capacity. Waiters circulated with champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres. Gregory ascended the stage, tapped the microphone, and addressed the crowd. His voice, smooth and measured, carried the easy authority of a man born to public speaking. He thanked the audience for their continued generosity toward educational causes worldwide. He outlined new initiatives to collaborate with philanthropic partners in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Applause filled the room. Cameras flashed, and for a moment Gregory believed he had orchestrated the perfect evening. But the final act of his speech was cut short by a sudden commotion at the main entrance. A hush spread through the crowd like a ripple on water. Heads turned. Photographers scrambled to refocus their lenses. Gregory blinked under the bright stage lights, unsure what was happening. Then he saw the figure at the entrance. Sophia Harrington, glowing in an emerald gown that clung to the gentle curve of her pregnant belly, stepped into the ballroom. She stood poised, her hair swept into a regal chignon, and her delicate features betraying none of the whirlwind of emotions roiling inside her. Behind her, 5 men in tailored suits formed a formidable presence, clearly acting as security. Each wore a discreet earpiece, scanning the room with professional vigilance. The sudden appearance of Mrs. Harrington, rumored to be indisposed, sent shockwaves through the crowd. Whispers cascaded from one cluster of guests to another. "She's here. Oh my, she's pregnant. Did you see those guards? Something's amiss." An awkward stillness took hold as people stepped aside to let her pass. She glided forward, meeting Gregory's gaze across the ballroom. He remained on stage, his hand frozen on the microphone. Their eyes locked in a silent exchange, her expression resolute, his a mixture of shock and dread. At this point, Elena Petrova instinctively moved toward the stage, uncertain how to react. She caught Sophia's stare, cool, penetrating, but not hysterical or pleading. It was the look of a woman who knew precisely what she was doing. Gregory collected himself just enough to speak into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears my lovely wife Sophia has decided to join us this evening." His voice wavered, but he forced a charming smile. The crowd tittered politely, unsure whether they were witnessing a family reconciliation or a spectacle of scandal. Sophia walked slowly, methodically, until she reached the base of the stage. One of her security guards helped her ascend the steps. Gregory extended a hand toward her, perhaps out of habit, but she ignored it. The hush was palpable. Guests shifted uneasily, torn between curiosity and propriety. Before Gregory could reclaim the microphone, Sophia took it and gazed at the audience. Her voice was steady, though laced with emotion. "Good evening, everyone. I do apologize for interrupting. It's been a while since I've attended one of our beloved Harrington Foundation galas. I see so many familiar faces, and some new ones, too." An uneasy laugh rippled through the crowd. Cameras continued to flash, capturing every nuance of this unfolding drama. Sophia looked directly at Gregory, her tone growing sharper. I came here tonight because, despite our family's tradition of philanthropy, there are times when one must also stand up for personal integrity. So I want to share a few words, not just about our charitable endeavors, but about the very meaning of partnership and trust. Gregory forced a strained smile. Sophia, dear, can we perhaps discuss this privately? He reached for the microphone, but she stepped back, maintaining control of it. The tension radiated so powerfully that even the normally poised aristocrats in the front row shifted in their seats. Just then, as if on cue, Elena Petrova emerged beside the stage, attempting to remain inconspicuous, but failing miserably. Eyes flickered between Sophia and Elena. Some recognized Elena from various events. Others asked each other in hushed tones who she was. And still others noticed Gregory's uneasy body language, reading volumes into it. Sophia inhaled, steadying herself. No, Gregory. This discussion needs to be public. Because I believe this matter concerns not just our marriage, but the Harrington legacy and all those who stand with this family. No classical orchestra or polite conversation could mask the tension now. The Gala crowd, transfixed, resembled spectators in a Roman arena waiting for the final blow. The luster of crystal chandeliers and the clink of champagne glasses seemed oddly out of place in such a raw, human drama. Sophia turned to face the audience once more. Many of you have known my husband and me as a united front dedicating ourselves to global education causes. Tonight I stand before you carrying our child. She placed a hand on her belly. And I have learned truths about my husband that make me question the foundation of our marriage. A ripple of shock coursed through the assembly. Gasps were audible. Gregory, desperate, tried to reach for Sophia's arm. Sophia, please. This is not the time or place. She stepped back, holding the microphone with a steadiness that belied her trembling heart. Oh, I think it's exactly the time and place. You see, Gregory, you've paraded a certain associate here. She glanced at Elena, whose face flushed to our events, our dinners, even our family home, all while claiming I was merely absent or unwell. But the truth is, I've never been more aware. The cameras, the credit card bills, the phone records, all of it, points to one inescapable fact. You broke your vows. A wave of murmurs surged through the crowd. Elena, feeling cornered, tried to exit the scene, but the throng of onlookers made it difficult. She settled for standing near the edge of the stage, face-pale eyes darting for an exit strategy. Gregory attempted to wrest the microphone from Sophia, but one of her security guards intervened, stopping him discreetly yet firmly. From the first row, a few philanthropic heavyweights exchanged concerned glances. The entire stage had become a battlefield of reputations. With measured composure, Sophia continued. What you might not realize, Gregory, is that the Harrington family fortune is not solely yours to command. My father, Augusto Moretti, helped restructure parts of this empire under various trusts and partnerships. And I hold here, she gestured to the folder carried by one of her guards, legal documentation proving that in the event of spousal misconduct or endangerment of our child's rightful inheritance, controlling interest in several Harrington properties and ventures reverts to me. Her words echoed in the hush. Audiences parted their lips in disbelief. Could it be possible that the pregnant wife, presumed powerless, held the real keys to the empire? Gregory's face contorted from panic to anger. You can't do this, he muttered through clenched teeth, trying to keep his voice low enough to remain somewhat dignified. This is insane, Sophia. You'll ruin both of us. Sophia gave him a look tinged with equal parts sadness and resolve. You did that the moment you decided our marriage was dispensable. She turned to the audience, her voice regaining composure. For those of you concerned about the Harrington Foundation, rest assured. My intention is not to destroy what we've built, but to ensure it isn't tainted by deceit and betrayal. Gasps and whispers grew louder. Some in attendance discreetly slipped away, not wanting to be embroiled in scandal. Others edged closer, drawn by the irresistible magnetism of real-life drama. The paparazzi took rapid-fire photos, capturing Gregory's stunned expression, Sophia's resolute poise, and Elena's distress. Finally, Elena found her courage and stepped forward. Her voice quivered but carried a tinge of defiance. Sophia, I didn't mean to. This was never about taking your place. Gregory said. Sophia cut her off, a single raised hand silencing her. I suggest you speak to Gregory about that. I hold no illusions about who is truly at fault. He made vows before God and our families, not you. However, if you planned to assert any claim here, you'd find yourself outmaneuvered. I protect what is mine. Every word reverberated with finality. In that moment, it was clear to all who possessed the real power. Gregory, once the assured scion of an ancient empire, now stood as though the floor had collapsed beneath him. One of Sophia's security guards produced the folder containing the documents. The guard handed them to Sophia, who held them up for the crowd to see. She then spoke into the microphone, reading select clauses that outlined her newfound rights. This outlines a trust deed, signed 3 generations ago, reaffirmed when we married, she explained. In the event of proven marital misconduct, which we have in abundance, Sophia let the statement hang. Eyeing Gregory, all Harrington properties tied to the original family holdings become subject to special provisions. My father's legal team has verified that these provisions remain valid in the eyes of both British and Italian law. She offered a thin smile, an expression halfway between triumph and heartbreak. It appears our ancestors wanted to protect the Harrington wives, who sometimes came from wealthier or equally influential families, from exploitation. Today, ironically, these dusty old clauses serve to protect me and our child. An outburst of hushed conversation broke out among the gala attendees. Many tried to recall if they'd ever heard of such archaic laws. Others scanned the crowd for any sign of Charles Harrington. Gregory's father, the patriarch, only to realize that ill health had confined him to his estate. The absence of the old lion only heightened the sense of chaos. Gregory grabbed the microphone, prying it out of Sophia's hands at last. Ladies and gentlemen, please. His voice shook with fury and desperation. Let us not air our private matters so publicly. I urge you, please continue to enjoy this evening's festivities and support our cause for global education. The Harrington Foundation remains fully committed to its mission. He turned to Sophia, voice hushed but audible in the microphone. We can discuss this in private away from these cameras. Sophia remained steady. We will discuss it, of course. But tonight, I want everyone to understand that your indiscretions have consequences. Elena, her cheeks burning, looked mortified. She tried to slip away, but found herself cornered by a barrage of flashes and questions from bold reporters who had managed to infiltrate the event or sweet-talk their way in. Ms. Petrova, is it true you traveled with Mr. Harrington to Hong Kong last month? Were you aware he was still committed to his marriage? She fought back tears, unsure whether to defend herself or remain silent. In the span of minutes, the Harrington Gala had transformed from a stately fundraiser to a live feed scandal broadcast on social media. Dozens of smartphones captured every detail, streaming them to the world. Gregory's plan to assert his dominance had backfired spectacularly. At last, the voice of the MC, who had been standing on the sidelines, piped through the sound system. "If we could all give the Harringtons a moment, perhaps we can continue with our scheduled program. We have performances planned and there is a silent auction in the West Wing." But the event could no longer continue, as if nothing had happened. The bombshell had detonated, and the fallout would be massive. Gregory stiffly escorted Sophia off stage, flanked by security on one side and paparazzi on the other. Somewhere behind them, Elena stood, abandoned tears threatening to break through the veneer of her heavily lined eyes. Moments later, the ballroom erupted into hushed speculation and frenzied replays of the public confrontation. Everyone understood that the Harrington family saga had taken a dramatic turn, and no matter how gilded the facade, a scandal of this magnitude would be near impossible to contain. By the following morning, British tabloids were ablaze. Daily Mail, Harrington heiress strikes back. Pregnant wife. Storms. Gala, chant. The Sun affair, laid bare. London's grandest gala becomes war zone. The Times' archaic trust laws, could they topple the Harrington dynasty? Social media platforms exploded with memes and hashtags. Harrington Gala Showdown, Team Sophia, Mistress Gate. Late-night talk show hosts made comedic sketches, dramatizing Gregory, cowering behind a bouquet of orchids, while Sophia, fierce and pregnant, brandished legal papers like a warrior's sword. At Harrington Manor, in Surrey, Charles Harrington watched live news coverage from his wheelchair, heart heavy with disappointment. The once proud patriarch had known Gregory was ambitious, but he had hoped marriage to Sophia would temper his son's impulsiveness. Now the entire Harrington name, revered for centuries, had become front-page fodder for scandal. He summoned the family's solicitors, intending to salvage what was left of the empire's reputation. Back in London, Sophia took refuge at the Corinthia Hotel, guarded by her security detail. Exhausted from the night's events, she found it difficult to sleep. She alternated between fierce resolve and waves of sorrow. She had loved Gregory. She had believed in their future. Still, she reminded herself why she'd done it, to protect their unborn child, and to refuse to remain complicit in a sham marriage. Augusto Moretti flew in from Milan with additional legal counsel. The Moretti family stood firmly behind Sophia, promising that any Harrington attempt to undermine her rights would face stiff counteraction. The plan was not necessarily to strip Gregory of everything, but to ensure he no longer had unilateral control. Gregory, for his part, retreated to an undisclosed location with a few close associates, including some sympathetic board members. He refused all interview requests and turned his phone off to avoid the avalanche of messages. Even Elena Petrova could not reach him. In a desperate text, she pleaded for an explanation, Gregory. "You promised me a future. What's happening now?" She received no answer. In high society circles, lines were being drawn. Some of the older aristocrats clucked their tongues at Gregory's indiscretion, seeing it as a grievous break from the code of gentlemanly behavior. Others criticized Sophia for airing marital problems, so publicly believing that real ladies handle such matters behind closed doors. Still others rallied to Sophia's side, admiring her boldness in taking a stand. Offers of help poured in from philanthropic circles, who respected Sophia's philanthropic track record more than Gregory's grandiose visions. International women's organizations reached out offering statements of support. Some business moguls declared they would maintain their partnerships with the Harrington Foundation, provided Sophia took a leading role. Meanwhile, the Harrington conglomerate's stock took a noticeable dip. Investors, spooked by the personal drama, worried it signaled deeper instability. Rumors of a potential internal shakeup at Harrington Global Holdings circulated with some board members discussing whether Gregory should temporarily step down as CEO to focus on personal matters. For Sophia, the day after the gala felt surreal. She woke up still wearing last night's emerald gown, having collapsed on the hotel bed. Her phone buzzed with messages, reporters, well-wishers, distant relatives. Even a few ex-boyfriends had surfaced out of nowhere, offering cryptic support or hoping for a chance to re-enter her life. But she put all those distractions aside to focus on what mattered: her baby. She arranged for a private physician to conduct a thorough checkup. The stress had been enormous, but medically she and the baby were fine. That was her solace amid the storm. With the world waiting to see her next move, Sophia held tight to her father's advice. Never act rashly in the heat of victory, Augusto had told her. Let the pieces fall into place, then strike your next move with precision. Sophia nodded, steeling herself for the road ahead. She had won the public confrontation, but the real fight for the Harrington empire was just beginning. Gregory Harrington sat alone in a discreet penthouse apartment in Mayfair, owned by a long-time family friend, Peter Winfield. The shades were drawn, blocking out the London skyline. At 35 years old, Gregory had never felt so caged by his own circumstances. The unstoppable force of his ambition had slammed head first into the immovable object of his wife's resolve. He replayed the gala confrontation in his mind. How had he let things spiral so far out of control? He recalled the surge of adrenaline when Elena Petrova first caught his eye, the thrill of secret rendezvous, the fleeting sense of escape from the responsibilities that weighed on him like lead. But now, in the harsh light of day, those moments felt juvenile. The cost was unimaginably high. In a desperate attempt to salvage his position, Gregory spent hours on the phone with Harrington board members, solicitors, and PR specialists. Most calls ended with apologies or polite evasion. We'll get back to you, Gregory. The situation is delicate. Even the most loyal of the Harrington staff found it hard to defend him publicly. Yes, Mr. Harrington is dealing with private family matters, they repeated ad nauseum to the press. Legal experts explained the precariousness of Gregory's predicament. The archaic trust laws combined with the prenuptial clauses introduced by Augusto Moretti indeed gave Sophia substantial leverage. If Gregory challenged them in court, it could trigger a protracted legal battle that would further tarnish the family name. Even if he somehow prevailed legally, the public relations nightmare would deepen. Sleep eluded him. During the day, he drank black coffee chain-smoked on the penthouse balcony and ignored calls from Elena. He felt a twinge of guilt toward her, too. He had whispered sweet nothings about a future life of luxury and partnership. Now faced with reality, he had no desire to speak to her. She symbolized his folly. In the quiet hours, he also wrestled with how to atone for what he'd done to Sophia. A piece of him still cared for her. He remembered the first time they kissed on the shores of Lake Como, how her laughter lit up any room she entered, how she spoke 5 languages fluently and glided between cultural worlds with astounding ease. But his shame and pride were too large to allow an apology. Finally, Gregory decided to act. He needed to shore up alliances. He reached out to elder statesmen of the Harrington dynasty, distant cousins who held ceremonial roles in the family trust. He convinced them that the family should present a united front to the media, urging Sophia to handle the matter privately. Some cousins expressed sympathy, others rebuked him, calling him reckless. Nonetheless, he pressed on. He also planned an emergency press statement through the Harrington Foundation. The statement, carefully worded, would assert that Mr. Harrington and Mrs. Harrington remain committed to resolving personal matters amicably, and that the family's philanthropic mission continues undeterred. It was damage control pure and simple. Yet beneath the facade of carefully managed, but Gregory knew the question remained. Would Sophia accept any compromise short of his complete capitulation? And even if she did, what would become of their marriage? In the end, Gregory realized that his beloved sense of invulnerability was gone. Like a gambler who had bet everything on a bluff and lost, he was left with nothing but regrets and the dawning recognition that he might have just destroyed the very thing he had spent his whole life trying to build. Sophia Harrington's next public move was a carefully orchestrated statement delivered at her father's London townhouse. With the Moretti and Harrington family crests displayed prominently behind her, she spoke to a select group of journalists. "I want to thank everyone who has shown concern for our family during this tumultuous time. My priority remains the welfare of my child and the continued integrity of the Harrington Foundation's philanthropic work. Mr. Harrington and I are in discussions to resolve these issues in a manner respectful to all parties involved. Our families have weathered storms before, and we shall do so again." The statement was measured, reinforcing that while she held tremendous power, she was not eager to burn everything down. She concluded with a pledge to personally oversee the upcoming scholarship initiative for underprivileged students in Eastern Europe, a project originally conceptualized by Gregory, but never realized. Social media buzzed again, praising Sophia for her poise. Even the mainstream press commended her magnanimous approach in adversity. Investors, somewhat reassured by her grace under fire, began stabilizing Harrington Global Holdings' stock. Donations to the foundation soared, ironically bolstered by the scandal's visibility. Meanwhile, Elena Petrova, feeling spurned and humiliated, left London. She flew to Paris, where she considered her next moves. She debated selling her story to the tabloids, but the Petrova family's code of discretion prevented such public theatrics. Instead, she contemplated forging new alliances. Rumor had it she was spotted in Monte Carlo, attending high society events and quietly seeking another powerful benefactor. In hushed corners of the Harrington boardroom, strategists grappled with how best to orchestrate a peaceful resolution. Some advocated for an amicable separation. Gregory and Sophia would divorce quietly, each retaining certain holdings, while publicly declaring mutual respect. Others urged the couple to reconcile, if only to maintain stability for the brand. But a forced reunion would fool no one, least of all Gregory and Sophia themselves. Over the coming weeks, Gregory and Sophia arranged clandestine meetings in neutral, lawyer-filled boardrooms. Though each meeting bristled with tension, there was a common thread: the child. Sophia insisted the baby be raised with a strong sense of both Harrington and Moretti heritage. Gregory, chastened by recent events, recognized his paternal responsibility. They agreed that if they divorced, both parents would maintain involvement in the child's upbringing. Yet the emotional chasm between them seemed unbridgeable. Trust once shattered is not easily restored. Sophia found herself mourning the life they could have had. Gregory found himself grappling with the knowledge that his own selfishness had brought them to this precipice. In the midst of these negotiations, Charles Harrington sent a handwritten letter to Sophia, commending her strength and lamenting his son's failings. He expressed hope that she would remain part of the Harrington legacy, regardless of how their marriage ended. The letter moved Sophia to tears. She wrote back, thanking Charles for his kindness. When the Harrington Foundation's next major event, a forum on global digital education, took place 6 months later. It was Sophia, visibly further along in her pregnancy, who took the podium. She spoke eloquently about bridging technological gaps, for disadvantaged communities, earning a standing ovation. Gregory was conspicuous by his absence. He had chosen to remain out of the limelight, working behind the scenes on various investment projects. Some said it was a forced exile. Others speculated he was soul-searching. Only time would tell if Gregory found the humility and wisdom to rebuild his relationship with Sophia, or if she would decide her destiny lay elsewhere. But one thing was certain. The child she carried would inherit a family legacy, not of silent compliance, but of bold confrontation, where betrayal was met head-on, and power could shift in an instant. As for the Harrington name, it now carried an asterisk, a reminder to the world that beneath the veneer of pedigree and wealth lay human fragility of ambition and the capacity for both betrayal and redemption. Thank you for joining us on this tumultuous journey inside the glittering halls and boardrooms of power. We've witnessed how even vast fortunes and noble traditions can unravel when betrayal collides with ambition. The Harrington saga is far from over. Its next chapter may see alliances shift, fortunes reforged, or perhaps a glimmer of reconciliation. Through it all, one undeniable lesson emerges. When love and loyalty shatter, the fallout can reshape entire empires. If you've been captivated by this real-life drama novel, where every diamond sparkled with secrets, be sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Are you Team Sophia, or do you believe Gregory can redeem himself? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into gripping sagas of wealth, power, and passion. Until next time, keep your eyes open for the brightest lights, often cast the darkest shadows. A pristine marble hallway echoes with hurried footsteps. A young woman tears, streaking her cheeks, clutches her rounded belly as she moves with urgency. Behind heavy double doors, a powerful man's voice thunders, threatening to unravel everything she holds dear. Beneath glittering chandeliers and in the looming shadow of a courtroom, their worlds collide. Money, betrayal, and scandal swirl like a storm ready to break. This is the story of a pregnant wife forced to give birth alone. A ruthless millionaire brought to his knees by truth, and the unexpected arrival of twins that changes everything. Hannah Collins was not born into wealth. Her father was a retired mail carrier from Bakersfield, California, and her mother a substitute teacher with a passion for English literature. Hannah grew up respecting the value of $1. She learned early on that life offered no shortcuts. She had her first job at 16, bussing tables at a local diner to save for community college. Her dream was to attend a reputable university, if only she could afford the tuition. At 19, she caught a stroke of luck acceptance to a philanthropic scholarship funded by real-life billionaire Mackenzie Scott. With that scholarship, Hannah transferred to the prestigious Berkeley College, where she studied economics. In the midst of intense assignments and late-night study sessions, she volunteered at campus food drives. Her humility and genuine warmth drew people toward her. She'd always been the listener, in a conversation the person who asked questions about everyone else's aspirations, and rarely spoke of her own. Then came Daniel Mitchell. He wasn't just some affluent student on campus. He was the son of corporate magnate Frederick Mitchell, known for his portfolio of luxurious hotels and real estate ventures along the West Coast. Daniel's arrival at Berkeley created a stir. Newspapers snapped pictures of him driving up in a custom vintage Aston Martin, rumored to cost more than a small house. His father's name opened doors effortlessly. Yet behind the flamboyant displays of wealth, Daniel possessed an undeniable charm. His wit, confidence, and keen business sense made him the most intriguing figure in countless social circles. Hannah and Daniel first met when they were assigned as partners in a macroeconomics project. She was timid, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans, while Daniel breezed in wearing an impeccably tailored blazer, ignoring the code that most students followed. Hannah braced herself for arrogance, but Daniel flashed an unexpectedly warm smile. He praised her for her precise financial models, and he seemed genuinely interested in her background. Their project meetings extended into coffee dates, then dinners, and eventually late-night walks around campus. For Hannah, it felt like a fairy tale. Shortly after they both graduated, Daniel invited her to a glitzy gala at the Mitchell family's flagship hotel in Los Angeles. It was a surreal experience for Hannah, watching celebrities and CEOs mingle effortlessly. Strobe lights illuminated the floor as the band played. That night, Daniel pulled her aside to a quiet spot on the balcony, overlooking a cityscape of twinkling skyscrapers. He confessed that he had fallen in love with her spirit and sincerity. Before she could fully process his words, he slipped a diamond ring onto her finger, promising a future she had never dared to imagine. Yet that was just the glittering beginning. Marriage to Daniel promised a life of opulence. She believed that together they would be unstoppable. Her conscientious drive combined with his powerful network. Little did she know that beneath the surface of polished floors and expensive suits, old rivalries and dark secrets lurked in corners she couldn't even see yet. Just 6 months into their marriage, Hannah sensed subtle shifts in Daniel's demeanor. Though he still acted loving in public privately, he would lock himself in his study, taking calls Hannah wasn't supposed to overhear. Sometimes at 3 in the morning, she would awaken to the glow of his phone illuminating the bedroom, while he texted a contact saved under odd aliases, Investor 1 Merchant 2, or simply X. If she asked, he'd give a tight smile and say, "Just business." Hannah busied herself with charitable projects. She volunteered at a local women's shelter and championed educational programs for underprivileged girls. Her philanthropic pursuits brought her back to her own humble origins and offered a sense of purpose. She longed to share it with Daniel, but he always brushed off her stories with a curt nod. "We can write a check," he'd say. "Money is faster than you volunteering all day." Hannah would protest that real change required human engagement, a discussion they never quite resolved. Whispers around the Mitchell family gatherings also hinted at tension. Frederick Mitchell, a silver-haired man with an assertive voice, often asked Daniel about the long game for the Mitchell empire. He questioned Hannah's influence over Daniel's focus. Frederick's wife Clarissa regarded Hannah coolly, as if the young woman didn't quite fit in. Daniel's mother avoided open confrontation, but her eyes carried an unmistakable disapproval. One day, Hannah stumbled across a note in Daniel's coat pocket, a scrawled message reading, "We must finalize the deal. No more delays." S. It made her heart pound. Who was S? Was it a woman, a business partner? Anxiety ate at Hannah, but she had no concrete evidence to justify her concerns. Over the next weeks, she convinced herself it must be a typical business transaction. She loved Daniel, and she wanted to trust him. Besides, in the Mitchell circle, secrecy was as common as daily news. Everything was hush-hush until the ink dried on a contract. Still, a gnawing feeling of doubt took root. Hannah had grown up in a family where secrets were frowned upon, and honesty was paramount. Although she told herself Daniel was simply busy, she occasionally spotted unfamiliar phone numbers in his call history, or vague messages about late-night board meetings. With each new sign, her instincts sharpened. She knew something big was brewing behind the gilded doors of their life, and it was bound to crack open. A year into their marriage, Hannah experienced dizzy spells and morning nausea. At first, she assumed it was stress. The tension of married life to a corporate prince had turned her once easygoing days into a whirlwind of social obligations. But after one particularly severe spell, she visited her gynecologist. The blood test and ultrasound confirmed the unexpected news. She was pregnant. A wave of emotions crashed over her: joy, fear, hope, and worry. She wondered how Daniel would react. Their recent interactions had been overshadowed by business calls and overshadowed by his father's constant presence. But she also remembered the tender, passionate man she'd married. Perhaps a child might bring them closer together, bridging the emotional gaps that had formed. Over dinner, she mustered the courage to share the news. Daniel sat at the head of their long mahogany dining table, scanning financial reports. Candlelight flickered across his face. Hannah's heart thudded in her chest as she said, "Daniel, I'm pregnant." She expected a range of emotions, but not the complete stillness that fell over him. For a moment he seemed stunned. Then he burst into a wide grin, scooping her up in a tight embrace. "That's amazing," he whispered. "You've just made me the happiest man alive." For the next few days, Daniel's attention hovered entirely on Hannah and the baby. He even talked about renovating a wing of the house into a nursery, complete with imported furniture and whimsical murals. Hannah, relieved by his reaction, began to breathe easier. She found herself daydreaming about pushing a stroller through city parks, telling bedtime stories, building a family. Yet in the back of her mind, she remembered the mysterious calls, the hushed tones, and the persistent secrecy. As weeks passed, Daniel's initial excitement seemed genuine, but there was something unsettled lurking behind his eyes. Whenever his phone rang late at night, he'd slip out of bed, returning only after he believed Hannah had fallen back asleep. She wasn't sure if the pregnancy had truly softened him, or if it had merely forced him to pause in the middle of some secret crisis. For a while, the joy overshadowed the darkness. Hannah focused on staying healthy, reading baby books, and eagerly awaiting each doctor's appointment. But fate doesn't favor illusions for long. Soon a storm of accusations, hidden deals, and heartbreak would ravage their carefully crafted facade. It began with an early morning phone call from Hannah's friend, Lisa Alvarez, a sharp-eyed reporter for the Los Angeles Tribune. The minute Hannah answered, she heard Lisa's anxious tone. "I'm so sorry you have to find out this way, but my colleagues have a story in the works about Daniel. Something big." Hannah's stomach clenched. What kind of story? "There's talk of illegal money funneling through a shell corporation. They're tying it to Daniel. Hannah, the allegations involve offshore accounts, tax evasion. It's massive. He could be indicted if anything is proven." Hannah felt faint. She stumbled to the couch, pressing a hand against her belly. Lisa's voice continued. "I wanted you to know before it hits the headlines. I'm not sure how accurate the details are, but the investigators are from the Department of Justice, so it's serious." When she confronted Daniel after he returned from work, his face turned ashen. He insisted the rumors were false, a smear campaign orchestrated by a business rival. He pulled Hannah into a desperate embrace, promising that his lawyers had the situation under control. "Trust me," he whispered. But Hannah's trust had already begun to fray. As the story gained traction in the media, reporters hounded the Mitchell mansion gates. Every day, tabloids splashed headlines about the Mitchell scandal. The pregnant Hannah couldn't step outside without seeing her husband's name plastered in bold letters across newspapers and websites. She retreated indoors, focusing on her health. Stress made her nauseous, and her once glowing optimism soured into a constant knot of fear in her gut. One evening, Frederick Mitchell appeared at their doorstep with an entourage of advisers. The older man brushed past Hannah with a stiff nod, marching into Daniel's study. She heard angry voices through the thick door, a barrage of shouted words like innocence, liabilities, and family reputation. By midnight, Frederick left with a tight-lipped scowl, ignoring Hannah on his way out. Alone with Daniel, she pleaded, "Please tell me what's happening. I can't bear living in the dark." Daniel avoided her eyes. "I'm handling it, Hannah. There's nothing for you to worry about. Just focus on our baby." Then he shut himself in the study, leaving her there with an impossible swirl of questions. The next day, Daniel arranged for private security to stand guard at the front door, effectively isolating Hannah from the outside world. She was trapped in a gilded cage of rumors and unspoken truths. As Hannah's belly grew, Daniel's presence at home waned. He left the house early, claiming urgent meetings with high-profile attorneys. Entire weekends passed with Hannah alone in the cavernous mansion, the stony hush broken only by the hum of air conditioning or the footsteps of housekeeping staff. She tried to contact Lisa for updates, but her calls went straight to voicemail. On the surface, it looked like the Mitchells had closed ranks, shutting out the press, and Hannah was just another outsider. Weeks turned into months. Hannah's gynecologist, Dr. Valerie Holmes, expressed concern about her patient's elevated blood pressure. Stress was a major factor. Concerned friends offered to visit, but the Mitchell estate security often turned them away, citing orders from Mr. Mitchell. Furious, Hannah confronted Daniel. "Why are you isolating me? I'm not a prisoner here." Daniel's expression hardened with impatience. "I'm protecting you from the paparazzi. Can't you see that they're hungry for any scrap of gossip?" She didn't believe him. The gates might have kept reporters out, but they also locked her in. There were no heartfelt conversations anymore. No gentle morning kisses. Occasionally, Daniel would rest his palm on her belly, feeling the baby's movements only to retreat into that unreadable shell. Anxiety overshadowed Hannah's excitement about motherhood. Late at night, she sat by the nursery, imagining the gentle coo of a newborn in her arms. She wondered if Daniel would even be there for the birth. One evening, she found an old photo album from their Berkeley days. Turning the pages, she smiled at pictures of them laughing at campus events. How had those sunny, carefree moments turned into this bleak hush? Then, by chance, Hannah discovered a hidden folder in Daniel's study. It contained documents about a company named Sterling Ventures. The files mentioned transactions to places like the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, along with legal disclaimers and suspicious invoices. A dizzying swirl of numbers and names scrolled across the pages. Hannah's heart hammered in her chest as she realized that Daniel was far more involved than he'd let on. These weren't rumors. They were evidence. Tears blurred her vision. She now faced a terrifying choice. Confront Daniel with the possibility that he was involved in criminal activity or remain in this quiet agony, complicit in his silence. The father of her unborn child might be entangled in a major scandal that could lead to prison time. How would she raise a baby under these circumstances when the man she loved wasn't the person she thought he was? The story broke one sweltering July morning. The Los Angeles Tribune published an extensive exposé featuring leaked financial documents implicating Daniel Mitchell and other big names in elaborate tax evasion schemes. The name Sterling Ventures appeared repeatedly, tying Daniel to multi-million-dollar siphoning operations. The media frenzy intensified. Camera crews stationed themselves outside the estate gates, broadcasting around the clock. Hannah woke to the blinding glare of flashing cameras. Helicopters buzzed overhead, filming live segments for national news. She flipped on the television to see Daniel's face in close-up. A stern news anchor read Daniel Mitchell, heir to the Mitchell Hotel's fortune, stands accused of orchestrating offshore schemes to dodge taxes worth tens of millions. Sources say the Justice Department will file charges soon. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Distant relatives, old acquaintances, and even random strangers on social media demanded explanations. Hannah's mind reeled. Fear for Daniel's future warred with her sense of betrayal. For a moment, she believed Daniel might have a valid explanation, an elaborate setup, a smear campaign. But the files she found in his study told a different story. Daniel arrived home that night, exhausted, his tie askew. He looked at her with wounded eyes. "Hannah, they're wrong. I can beat these charges. My lawyers will prove there's no case." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she brought the hidden documents from his study and laid them before him. "What is this, Daniel? Why do these show the exact same illegal transactions the media is talking about?" He flinched. "You were snooping. Snooping. I'm your wife. You've locked me in this house with your secrets." Cornered and weary, Daniel finally admitted that the finances were complicated. He claimed half of it was Frederick's doing, that Sterling Ventures was a dummy corporation created by his father to move money discreetly. They used my name to keep it off his direct records. I didn't know how deep it went until recently, Hannah. Her world reeled. Was Daniel a victim or a willing participant covering his father's tracks? She tried to glean the truth through his tearful pleas, but something felt off. That night they lay in bed, silently, the space between them too wide for any whispered endearments. Hannah couldn't sleep, consumed by dread of what would happen if Daniel was indicted and how a baby fit into this disintegrating picture. Days later, Frederick Mitchell summoned Daniel and Hannah to a quiet meeting at the Mitchell corporate headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. The steel and glass building overlooked a sea of skyscrapers. Photographers swarmed the sidewalk, but security quickly ushered them into a private elevator up to Frederick's executive suite. Frederick sat behind a massive desk, flanked by attorneys and corporate advisors. His gaze fell upon Hannah's pregnant figure, then flickered away as though her presence was an inconvenience. "We need to protect the family name," he began, steepling his fingers. "This fiasco has tarnished our reputation. I've arranged a strategic plan with our legal team." He proceeded to outline a spin campaign painting Daniel as a victim of unscrupulous accountants, the scapegoat for complicated financial channels that Frederick's CFO had allegedly orchestrated. Hannah bristled. They were planning to manipulate the narrative, pinning the blame on a faceless CFO. What if that man was innocent too? Frederick's voice was cool, unyielding. "We have to release a public statement soon, clarifying Daniel's position. You, Hannah, will have to appear by his side and confirm that your husband had no knowledge of the shady deals." "Understand?" Hannah's throat constricted. She saw Daniel shift uncomfortably in his chair, but he said nothing. Did he want her to lie for him? For Frederick? She wanted to stand up for her own integrity. But she was alone in a room full of men in suits, her belly visibly heavy with child feeling more trapped than ever. Her mind raced. Was she truly expected to risk her own moral compass to salvage the Mitchell name? When she hesitated, Frederick narrowed his eyes. "We all have much to lose, my dear. I trust you're loyal to your husband and to this family." The cold threat in his tone was unmistakable. Out in the corridor, Hannah confronted Daniel. What about that CFO? Do we know he actually set this up? Daniel didn't meet her eyes. This is bigger than us, Hannah. We need to do whatever it takes. The betrayal stung. The man she loved was either too terrified or too complicit to speak the truth. Hannah, reeling, realized that Daniel might be willing to sacrifice anyone for his own skin. She recalled the vow she made on her wedding day to stand by Daniel in sickness and health. But no one had warned her about moral sickness, about complicity in potential crimes. That vow had never felt so tenuous. The following week played out like a surreal drama. Newspapers bellowed new allegations daily, additional offshore accounts, hidden real estate deals, hush money payouts. Hannah found it difficult to discern fact from speculation. Frederick's PR team churned out statements portraying Daniel as a naive pawn manipulated by cunning financiers. Some media outlets bought the narrative. Others dug deeper, fueling suspicion that the Mitchell family was orchestrating a cover-up. On social media, the public's reaction was a mix of outrage and fascination. Hannah's name trended alongside hashtags, labeling her everything from a gold digger to a pitiful victim. Strangers on the internet argued over whether she had knowingly participated in the scheme. Some even speculated her pregnancy was a ploy to garner sympathy. Anxiety festered in her. Each pang of the baby's movement in her womb reminded her that she carried new life, an innocent child thrust into a maelstrom of deception. In her quieter moments, Hannah prayed for clarity, for the strength to see right from wrong in a world she barely recognized anymore. Finally, a bombshell. The Department of Justice filed formal charges against Daniel Mitchell, citing evidence from whistleblowers within Mitchell hotels. A court date was set. Hannah's heart sank at the thought of Daniel standing trial, potentially facing prison. She wrestled with conflicting emotions: love for her husband, anger at his betrayals, fear for her unborn child. And overshadowing it all was a quiet longing for the simpler life she once knew. Despite the chaos, the baby's due date loomed. Hannah's OB/GYN appointments revealed that she was carrying twins, an astonishing revelation. As if one baby wasn't already enough of a revelation, now she had two souls reliant on her choices. She shared the news with Daniel, who was momentarily overjoyed but quickly pulled back into crisis mode with his legal team. "That's incredible, sweetheart," he murmured, phone pressed to his ear. "I'm so sorry, but I have to go." And go he did, leaving Hannah to juggle her pregnancy and nerves alone. The paparazzi's cameras followed her at every turn. She found solace only in fleeting moments, like the gentle hush of early mornings when she felt her twins' kicks and reminded herself there was still a future worth fighting for. The day of the hearing arrived a preliminary session before the main trial. Daniel left early with his lawyer Michael Johnson, a high-powered attorney rumored to have once represented real estate mogul Donald Bren. Hannah, now heavily pregnant, hadn't planned to attend under Daniel's insistence that she stay home to rest. Yet an unshakable intuition told her she needed to be there. Summoning her courage, she hailed a taxi despite the security detail's protests and headed to the courthouse downtown. Outside, protesters clashed with supporters, holding signs reading, "Justice for Mitchell versus Lock Them Up." Police barricades lined the steps. The air was thick with tension. Inside the gallery buzzed with journalists. Hannah slipped into a back row, hoping to remain unnoticed, but cameras quickly spotted her. She tried to focus on the proceedings. The judge read out the charges, and Daniel's lawyer entered a plea of not guilty. As the prosecutor outlined the allegations, Hannah's heart sank under the weight of evidence, detailing shell companies' falsified documents and incriminating emails. Daniel cast furtive glances around the courtroom, but never saw his wife in the back. Frederick Mitchell, seated in a reserved area, stared impassively forward. When the session concluded, Hannah snuck out, tears burning her eyes. She wished she could believe Daniel's innocence, but the facts seemed damning. On the steps, she faced a swarm of cameras. One reporter shoved a microphone into her face. "Hannah, do you think your husband is guilty? Will you testify against him?" Another added, "Is it true you're having twins overwhelmed?" Hannah cradled her belly and pushed through the throng. She barely made it to the taxi, her heart pounding wildly. Once home, she locked herself in the bathroom, tears streaming down her cheeks. She whispered to her unborn babies, "What am I going to do?" Days turned into a blur. Daniel's legal team prepared for the main trial. Frederick hammered out settlements with various parties doing damage control. The family insisted Hannah stay away from all court appearances, citing stress. But a sense of foreboding weighed heavy on her, as though she stood at the cusp of a life-altering decision. She prayed for an epiphany that never came. 2 weeks later, an urgent situation arose. Hannah, 8 months pregnant, awakened in the early morning with sharp pains. Alarmed, she paged Dr. Holmes, who advised her to come to the hospital immediately. Hannah dialed Daniel's phone. No answer. She called again, leaving frantic messages. Finally, she got a text from him, in a critical meeting. "What's happening?" "Heart racing." Hannah typed back that she was having severe contractions and might be in premature labor. Seconds later, Daniel's curt reply flashed, "I can't leave right now. I'll come when I'm done." A cold dread settled over her. She was alone, possibly about to give birth prematurely to twins, and the father was too busy. Summoning what strength she had, Hannah arranged for a ride to the hospital. The doctors confirmed that she was in early labor. Frantic nurses whisked her into a private birthing suite, hooking her to monitors that measured the twins' heartbeats. A swirl of white coats, surgical lights, and the smell of antiseptic overwhelmed her senses. Hours ticked by. The contractions intensified, each wave of pain assaulting her body. Dr. Holmes administered medication to slow labor, hoping to give the twins more time. Exhaustion blurred Hannah's thoughts. She kept glancing at the door, praying Daniel would rush in and comfort her. But he never showed. Alone, she cried out in anguish, gripping the rails of the hospital bed. Memories flooded her mind that night under the stars, when Daniel first told her he loved her, the sparkle in his eyes when he learned she was pregnant. Where had that man gone? Nurses attempted to soothe her, but her heartbreak was too deep. Eventually, the contractions subsided. The medical team decided to keep her hospitalized for observation for fear she might go into full labor any time. Later that evening, she awakened to find an empty chair by her bedside. Daniel had never arrived. Instead, she found a voicemail from him. "I'm sorry. Something came up with Dad. How are you feeling?" The hollow apology stung. In that moment, Hannah realized the emotional gulf between them was too vast. She vowed that if Daniel could abandon her at such a vulnerable time, she would find the strength to survive without him. After 2 days, the doctors stabilized Hannah's condition enough for her to return home, though they warned her to remain on bed rest. She instructed a driver to take her not to the Mitchell estate, but to a modest condominium she had quietly rented in anticipation of the worst. Using money she'd saved from her scholarship days and small inheritance from her late father, she had set aside enough for a security deposit and first few months' rent. It wasn't lavish, just 2 bedrooms and a small kitchen, but it was hers. She left a terse note at the Mitchell house, explaining she needed space for the remainder of her pregnancy. Then she turned off her phone ignoring the dozens of missed calls from Daniel Frederick and their lawyers. The second she stepped into the condo, she felt a sense of freedom. No imposing gates, no watchful security, no prying family. Here she could refocus on her unborn twins and decide how to move forward. Almost immediately, Hannah discovered how challenging it was to be heavily pregnant and alone in a new place. She had no staff to cater to her every need. Yet she found solace in setting up a makeshift nursery, rummaging through donated baby items from the women's shelter where she volunteered. She hung pastel-colored curtains, assembled a second-hand crib, and even pinned up small sketches. She'd made pictures of a future she hoped would be filled with love, not lies. The physical and emotional strain was intense. Some nights her back pain was so severe she struggled to rise from the couch. Other times, she lay awake, tears sliding silently down her cheeks, wondering if she was doing the right thing. But each time, doubt threatened to overwhelm her. She recalled the moment in the hospital alone in pain, waiting for a husband who never came. That memory hardened her resolve like steel. Finally, she turned her phone back on, bracing for the barrage of messages. One voicemail stood out, Lisa Alvarez, her reporter friend. Hannah. I know things have been chaotic, but there's something you need to see. Contact me ASAP. Hannah dialed Lisa, breathless with apprehension. Her friend's voice trembled. I just got a tip. Daniel's going to be charged with new counts. Apparently there's a paper trail showing he personally signed off on several illegal transfers. It's not just about his father. People within Mitchell Hotels are saying Daniel was the mastermind. The prosecutor might call you to testify. Hannah's heart pounded. She realized that if she were subpoenaed, she couldn't lie. She wouldn't lie. The line crackled with tension. He's the father of my children, she whispered. But I can't perjure myself. Lisa replied softly. I'm sorry, Hannah. I really am. Just be prepared. A week later, Hannah felt the familiar pang of contractions much stronger this time. Gasping, she dialed for an ambulance. Within minutes, she was whisked into a paramedic van, sirens wailing through LA's bustling streets. Fear mingled with determination as she told herself, I can do this. I have to do this. At Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, her world became a blur of sterile corridors, bright lights, and urgent voices. Nurses guided her to a delivery room. She prayed for a safe birth for the twins to come into the world, free from the Mitchell drama. No reporters, no paparazzi, just life in its raw, beautiful essence. Labor hit hard and fast. A swirl of pain, breathing exercises, and final pushes culminated in 2 piercing cries that shattered the tense hush. Her baby boy arrived first, followed by a baby girl, both wailing and alive. Tears of relief and joy streamed down Hannah's cheeks as she held them. Their tiny bodies trembled with each breath, wide eyes looking up at her, as if she were their entire universe. She named the boy Aaron, the girl Aurora names she'd secretly cherished for months. In that moment, the chaos of the outside world faded. A wave of profound love swept over her, so powerful that it nearly stole her breath. These 2 fragile beings were hers, and she would protect them fiercely. She stared at their perfect faces, overwhelmed by the fact that Daniel wasn't there. A pang of sadness sliced through her happiness, but she pushed it aside. She was enough. She had to be. When visiting hours came, Lisa dropped by with flowers and a bag of baby clothes. The room filled with warmth and laughter, momentarily distracting Hannah from her uncertain future. She learned that Daniel still hadn't responded to the news of her going into labor. It stung, but she accepted it as reality. The hospital staff adored the twins, cooing over their adorable matching features. Hannah was mesmerized by her children. Everything else, every scandal, every heartbreak, paled in comparison to the miraculous gift of their lives. Yet she knew the world outside that hospital door was a ticking time bomb. Soon she would have to face Daniel Frederick and the courts. For now, though, she allowed herself a fleeting moment of peace in the arms of her newborns. 2 days later, as Hannah was preparing to be discharged, she received a visitor who made her pulse race. Daniel. He showed up unannounced, hair disheveled, his usual polished demeanor replaced with an air of desperation. In his arms he clutched a bouquet of roses. Her heart pounded as he entered the room. For a long moment they both stared at the sleeping twins in their hospital bassinets. Daniel's expression was unreadable, part wonder, part terror. Finally he turned to Hannah. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know you'd gone into labor until it was too late." Hannah steeled herself. "You didn't check your phone. It wasn't that you didn't know. You chose not to come." He exhaled shakily, stepping closer to the bassinets. "They're beautiful." His voice wavered. "Hannah, I need to fix this. The scandal, the legal issues, I'm in too deep. But with you by my side, we stand a better chance of showing the court I'm a family man who made naive mistakes. We can fight these charges together." She stared at him in disbelief. "Are you asking me to lie under oath for you to pretend everything is fine while you dodge accountability?" Daniel's features tightened. "We can position it in a way that doesn't incriminate me further. Just confirm that I've been a loving husband, that I never once mentioned illegal transactions to you. We'll be unstoppable." Rage burned in Hannah's chest. She glanced at the twins, so innocent, then back at Daniel. "I'm not lying. My children deserve a father they can look up to, not a man who manipulates the truth." A flicker of frustration crossed Daniel's face. He looked around as if searching for words that might change her mind. "Think about it. If I go to prison, what happens to you and them? At least if I'm acquitted, you'll have a secure future. We'll have financial stability. I'd rather struggle honestly than live under $1 million lie." She shot back. Fresh tears stung her eyes, but her voice stayed firm. "Leave." Daniel hesitated, heartbreak etched on his face. Then he set the roses on a small table and walked out. The door closed softly behind him, and Hannah's exhausted body sank into the bed. She stared at her sleeping babies, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. She knew this confrontation wouldn't be the last. A fierce maternal instinct welled up inside her. She would protect them from the Mitchell family's darkness, no matter the cost. True to Lisa's warning, a subpoena arrived at Hannah's condominium a week after she brought the twins home. She opened the official envelope with trembling hands, reading that she was required to testify in Daniel's trial, scheduled for the following month. The mere thought of facing him in a public courtroom, forced to expose details of their private life, made her stomach churn. Nevertheless, she felt a strange sense of relief at the possibility of telling the truth. She had lived under a cloak of secrecy for too long. The babies slept in their crib nearby, their tiny chests rising and falling in sweet unison. Hannah steeled herself, vowing that her testimony would be honest, no matter how painful. After all, her children deserved a mother who upheld integrity, even if their father did not. Over the next days, she coordinated with the prosecutor's office, carefully going through every detail. The suspicious documents she found the day Daniel locked himself in his study. his father's demands for a cover-up. She was honest about her limited direct knowledge. No fabricated stories, no exaggerations. The more she recounted, the more she realized the extent of Daniel's deception. The night before the trial, Hannah barely slept. She paced her small living room, hearing the twins stir now and then. Legal counsel had arranged for her to have an escort to the courthouse to avoid the press. That was some relief, but it did nothing to ease the dread twisting her insides. As she rocked Aurora back to sleep, she whispered a silent prayer that truth would prevail no matter the outcome. On a crisp morning, Hannah arrived at the Los Angeles Superior Court. She wore a simple black dress, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. Microphones and cameras crowded the entrance, but she managed to slip inside through a private side door with the help of courthouse security. Her heels clicked on the marble floors, echoing the accelerating thump of her heart. Inside the courtroom, Daniel sat at the defense table, flanked by his lawyer, Michael Johnson, and another suited associate. He wore a solemn expression, his gaze briefly meeting hers before dropping to the table. Frederick Mitchell also occupied a seat directly behind Daniel, a stoic pillar of paternal support. The trial progressed with opening statements from both sides. The prosecution laid out a detailed timeline of alleged crimes, presenting evidence of money-wiring secret emails and coded memos. The defense tried to discredit the sources of these documents, claiming they were tampered with. Hannah felt her heart pound every time Daniel's name was mentioned. Finally, the bailiff called Hannah Collins to the stand. Her legs felt like jelly as she navigated to the witness box. After being sworn in, she settled into the chair, her eyes flickering to the judge and then to Daniel. He stared at her intently. She wondered if he was silently begging for mercy. The prosecutor began with straightforward questions about their marriage, how they met, and Hannah's living situation. Gradually, the questioning shifted to the critical period when rumors of financial misconduct first surfaced. Hannah answered calmly, detailing the suspicious calls, the documents she stumbled upon the day Frederick demanded her cooperation. Then came a pivotal moment. Did your husband, Daniel Mitchell, ever explicitly ask you to lie about his involvement or knowledge of these offshore transactions? A hush fell over the courtroom. Hannah's pulse throbbed in her ears. She recalled the hospital scene, her confrontation with Daniel. Licking her dry lips, she nodded. Yes. He asked me to support a narrative implying he was unaware of any illegality. He wanted me to testify that he was an unwitting participant. A murmur rippled through the audience. Reporters scribbled in their notepads. The defense quickly objected, but the judge allowed Hannah's statement to stand. She looked over at Daniel. His face had turned ashen. Frederick stared, daggers at her jaw clenched. The prosecution thanked her, and the defense began cross-examination. Michael Johnson attempted to paint Hannah's testimony as influenced by emotional strain, postpartum stress, and personal conflict. Isn't it true, Ms. Collins, that you are angry at Mr. Mitchell for neglecting you during pregnancy and used this as a means of retaliation? Hannah's voice trembled, but held firm. I'm testifying to the truth. I have no desire for revenge. I only want what is right. The cross-examination ended, and Hannah was dismissed. She stepped down, legs shaking, tears brimming in her eyes. The weight of the trial, the hush of the audience, and the knowledge that she had just incriminated the father of her children threatened to overwhelm her. She exited the courtroom, each footstep echoing her newfound resolve and heartbreak. Hours later, the courtroom doors opened again. Hannah sat outside on a wooden bench, hugging herself in an attempt to quell her shivers. Suddenly, she spotted a familiar face, her friend Lisa, carrying little Aaron and Aurora in a double stroller. She had volunteered to watch the twins during Hannah's testimony, but had arrived early to bring the babies back to their mother. Hannah smiled weakly, relieved to see her children safe amidst the chaos. Their bright eyes scanned the courthouse hallway, unaware of the tension swirling around them. As if on cue, Daniel emerged from the courtroom, flanked by his lawyer. His gaze fell upon the stroller. His face went pale. He took a shaky step forward, as though propelled by some paternal instinct. The corridor seemed to freeze. Reporters, attorneys, and bystanders stopped and stared, uncertain what would unfold. Daniel slowly approached, each step laden with visible remorse. He looked at the twins, his son Aaron, with a faint tuft of brown hair, and Aurora eyes wide in curiosity. They reached their small hands out, cooing softly. Something inside Daniel cracked. His chest rose and fell in rapid succession. His face contorted. Then, without warning, his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the polished marble floor, unconscious. Gasps echoed across the hallway. Commotion erupted as paramedics stationed at the courthouse rushed to his side, checking his pulse and hooking him up to an IV. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing the dramatic moment. Hannah watched in shock, a tumult of concern and anger swirling. The father of her children lay there, undone by a single glimpse of them. She sensed that Daniel's breakdown was far more than a physical collapse. It was the crushing weight of guilt, fear, and the stark realization of what he stood to lose. Medics revived Daniel within minutes. He blinked, disoriented, then struggled to sit up. His eyes darted around until they landed on Hannah and the stroller. Tears filled his eyes, as if in that fleeting moment he comprehended the magnitude of his choices. Strapped to a gurney, he was wheeled out to an ambulance. The swirling lights of emergency vehicles illuminated the stunned faces of onlookers, marking the crescendo of this surreal day. Daniel's collapse created a media frenzy overshadowing every other development of the trial that day. By evening, cable news channels played a continuous loop of the dramatic footage. Daniel Mitchell, the embattled millionaire, fainting upon seeing his newborn twins in the courthouse. Speculation ran wild. Some pundits claimed it was an act to evoke sympathy from the jury. Others believed it was the final crack in his facade of confidence. From her condominium, Hannah watched the coverage with exhaustion etched across her face. She held the twins close, trying to shield them from the noise blasting through the television. The phone beeped with messages from well-wishers and haters alike. She turned it off, needing peace. Lisa visited that night, bringing homemade lasagna and a warm hug. They sat on the floor, the babies sleeping soundly in their crib, while Lisa recounted the media chatter. "People are divided," she said, softly. "Some think Daniel's a con man, others feel sorry for him. But your testimony, it hit hard. Legal experts say it could seal his fate if the jury believes your account." Hannah swallowed a lump in her throat. She thought about the years she spent genuinely loving Daniel, the father of her children, and the heartbreak that came with betraying her own principles if she lied. "I didn't want it to end this way," she murmured. Lisa placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens, you did what you had to do. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself and for truth." Quiet settled around them. Through the window, city lights glimmered. Hannah gazed at the two sleeping infants, marveling at the delicate rise and fall of their chests. She whispered a silent vow. No matter what chaos the future held, she would nurture these children with every ounce of love and honesty she possessed. The trial stretched on for another week, with new witnesses and financial experts dissecting the labyrinthine structures of Mitchell's business empire. Hannah's attorney advised her to remain on standby, but she was not called back to the stand. She waited anxiously, dreading any phone call that might drag her back into the fray. Finally, the jury retreated to deliberate. On the morning they reconvened, a solemn hush fell over the courtroom. Hannah chose not to attend. Instead, she sat in her living room, the twins in her lap, and watched the live broadcast. Daniel stood as the jury foreman read the verdict, guilty on multiple counts of financial fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. The sentencing would come later, but immediate repercussions included revocation of Daniel's bail, meaning he would be taken into custody. Hannah's heart pounded. She expected to feel relief that justice was served, yet all she felt was a deep ache. She couldn't celebrate Daniel's downfall. He was still the father of her children. The cameras panned to Frederick Mitchell's stricken face, a disbelieving scowl as federal officers handcuffed his son. Daniel went quietly, his gaze distant, as though everything had turned to white noise around him. Then came the final blow. The court footage showed Daniel pausing briefly before leaving the courtroom. He turned to the cameras and whispered a single sentence. "Hannah, please forgive me." The moment was captured by every major network, fueling endless speculation about whether she would stand by him or move on. As Hannah gently patted Aaron's back to soothe him, tears welled in her eyes. She thought about the life they almost had, a marriage built on mutual respect, a father who would have cherished his children. In the end, Daniel's ambition and secrets had destroyed that fragile dream. She kissed Aurora's soft forehead, bracing herself to raise these twins alone. In the weeks following Daniel's conviction, Hannah was flooded with messages from people wanting her story. Book deals, daytime talk shows, tabloid exclusives. She rejected them all. What she craved more than anything was normalcy. She wanted the quiet hum of a stable life where she could provide for her children without feeling hounded by the ghost of Daniel Mitchell. Daniel's legal team filed appeals, but experts predicted little chance of reversal. Frederick Mitchell, meanwhile, faced his own separate inquiry, rumored to be more extensive. Entire factions of the Mitchell empire crumbled. Stock prices plummeted, and employees faced layoffs. Protesters picketed the Mitchell headquarters, demanding accountability. Hannah understood that her testimony had sealed Daniel's fate, but she felt neither pride nor regret. She'd done the only thing she could tell the truth. Now, with her meager savings, she had to plan for a life outside the shadow of the Mitchell name. Through her old contacts at the women's shelter, she received a modest stipend to conduct financial literacy workshops for underprivileged women, an opportunity to utilize her economics degree for something meaningful. It wouldn't make her rich, but it paid the bills. Each morning, she balanced the twins on her hips as she prepared materials determined to rebuild her life step by step. At night, sometimes loneliness gnawed at her. She missed the way Daniel once made her laugh, his gentle touch on her shoulder, his whispered promises. Yet every time she began to soften, an echo of the hospital scene. His absence in her darkest hour stopped her. There was no going back. Months passed, bringing an uneasy sense of closure. Daniel's sentencing day arrived. Hannah, though uncertain if she should be present, felt a moral imperative to witness the final chapter. Securing a babysitter, she made her way to the courthouse. As she entered, a hush fell among reporters who recognized her instantly, but she ignored their questions. Inside the courtroom, Daniel stood before the judge, shoulders hunched. The judge's tone was firm, yet measured a sentence of 8 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 5+ substantial fines and restitution. Silence enveloped the room. Daniel turned slowly, his eyes settling on Hannah in the back row. For a brief moment, a flicker of regret and sorrow passed between them. She thought she saw his lips form the words, "I'm sorry." Then officers led him away. That was it, the end of Daniel Mitchell's free life and the final page of the saga they once shared. Hannah stood quietly leaving the courtroom. Outside, paparazzi shouted for a statement, but she merely walked on the crisp air filling her lungs. She had no more to give to the public spectacle. Her only focus now was on the 2 little lives waiting at home. That evening, as she cradled Aurora and Aaron in her arms, she watched them coo and giggle, oblivious to the turmoil that had upended their lives before they were even born. In their eyes, she found hope, a reminder that every ending carries the seeds of a new beginning. She pressed her lips to their soft cheeks, whispering, "We'll be okay." And so Hannah's journey from a devoted wife to a single mother, forging her own path, highlights the raw power of truth, the cost of deceit, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her children. Despite the betrayal and scandal, her story stands as a testament that even in the darkest storms, resilience can light the way toward a better tomorrow. In the end, Hannah found the courage to protect what mattered most: her integrity, her newborn twins, and her own destiny. Now, standing on the threshold of a new chapter, she faces life with an open heart, ready to embrace the unknown and carve a path guided by honesty and love. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because every click fuels more stories that inspire, provoke thought, and illuminate the human journey. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.